Hey, this is Madeline Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio.
Well, we've got plenty to talk about today with the latest social audio news. Are you ready to dive right in?
Yeah, let's do it. We're going to start, I think, with Spaces, as we always do. Now, Twitter's got a funny atmosphere around here right now. Do you feel that, Madeline?
Yes, definitely. There's just something in the air, it's a little different at the moment. Just don't know what's going to happen next. Hopefully all good things, right? That's the hope, and hoping that Spaces will continue to be here and grow and get even bigger.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an air of uncertainty, which is to be expected after, everything that's happened over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, I was reading somewhere that Elon hasn't even been in charge for a full month yet. And, what we've seen happen has just been an incredible pace. We have said that week on week. For Spaces, we're still none the wiser, though, Madeline. Am I right? That really there's no word from Elon, either whether he's in support of Spaces continuing or whether it's something that's going to go. I mean, we know for certain that there's no team there building it any longer. There's no one to fix any bugs that might come up. But we haven't got like a definitive yay or nay on this feature, have we?
Right. And that's a little concerning because we certainly don't want Spaces to go away. We don't really want any of these features we've come to rely on to go away, but they could. I mean, there's departments in Twitter that are completely gone, that doesn't exist. And I'm just concerned, like, what if something happens and we all just can't get onto Spaces? Are they going to fix it quickly and easily and let us still use it? Or is it just going to go by the wayside? We just don't know. There's just so many things are up in the air at the moment. And it is concerning. And, last week, Daniele, who was part of the Spaces team, he had been let go and he held a special Twitter Space discussion. I wish it was recorded. We don't have a recording to share because it was, I guess there's not, or did he take it down? Do you know?
Yeah, it was there. And I then went back to listen to it later and it just says no Spaces no longer available. So I'm assuming that he's gone back and deleted that, which is a shame because I would have liked to have listened to it. However, there were some clips around and about from the space, which I could still hear, even though the main space wasn't there. I mean, again, maybe this is a glitch, maybe it's a bug, who knows? There's no one to report it to. So I could hear some clips and someone had clipped what he'd said around Spaces. I think it might have even been George that was in that space live that asked Daniele if he felt that Elon could see the value in Twitter Spaces and in social audio for Twitter. And Daniele's answer to that in this clip was not that I'm aware of. I mean, this is one person who's part of, all those hundreds of people that worked at Twitter. But in his opinion, he kind of couldn't see one way or the other. Again, still uncertainty around the future of Spaces. Simon Balmain's kind of backed that up, though, in terms of the uncertainty of it with a thread, which was actually on the future of communities. But I really think what he's saying here about the future of communities could be said for Spaces as well. He says so many of the key people behind it simply aren't with the company anymore, and that makes it even harder for me to see how it moves forward, since I don't know who is left that understands the how, whats and whys of how it was all built. Yes, that comment is particularly about communities, but I really feel like the same could be said for Spaces, because all of those names and people that we were familiar with and used to see dropping in and out of our spaces aren't there anymore. And surely they were the ones that held all the keys, knew all the answers.
Right. They kept it running and they're not there anymore. So there's no way to know like what is going on, who's maintaining Spaces. What if it breaks? What's going to happen next? We just don't know. I'm glad we're all able to still be here live and do this. I just wish they were being a little more forthcoming for those who are still there to let us know, like, is this going to survive? Are we still going to be able to keep using Spaces? We do this every week here. I co-host 2 other Spaces every week, so 3 total for me. I mean, I'm already kind of thinking ahead, like, all right, do I need to just have Clubhouse on standby? And you and I have talked about simulcasting on Clubhouse and, like not leaving Clubhouse behind, because that might become our new home at some point to continue this discussion of social audio. So I just wish there was more information being relayed to all of us to know more about like what's going on behind the scenes. Is this still going to be here tomorrow?
Yeah. And I mean, having seen how quick fire some of these decisions have been, I've literally gone to bed and it's been one way and woken up the next morning and whole departments have disappeared. It's quite, it could really happen that we just all log in tomorrow and it's not here. That said, social audio as a thing isn't going anywhere. And I still feel like, Clubhouse is still there. LinkedIn audio events are still there. Spotify Live is still there. Does anyone remember that one? I mean, it's, tumbleweeding, I think. I went on there the other day and I think there were 2 rooms happening over there. I don't know, not much going on anyway. But the different standalone apps, we've got a story later on regarding one of those. They're still doing their thing as well. And yes, we did talk about simulcasting this. And in fact, I was hoping to do a test between last week and this week to see whether or not I could hook it all up and go live on Clubhouse at the same time as being here on Twitter. I know it can be done. Michael Sterling, I'm looking at you. I know you have done it and I'm hoping for your help in setting this all up. But the other thing is, I'd quite like to see whether or not I could do it over on LinkedIn, because the thing with the simulcast is that having the Roadcaster, I've got a connection out to the phone, which is where I'm talking to you from on Twitter, because obviously it's mobile only. We can't expect any desktop version anytime soon. I think that can be sure. But I can then use the desktop version of LinkedIn via a USB connection or Club Deck, which allows me to connect to Clubhouse via the desktop. So there are those different connections. But as we've said before, there are 1,000,001 things when you're hosting a space that you need to think about, particularly when, we've got a kind of agenda and a bit of a plan of what we're going to talk about. I'm trying to record it for the podcast. And so to add that in, I'm definitely going to need to test that stuff out before we go live with it. But equally, I also know that All Things Audio was born out of us experimenting with this and experimenting with the tech and trying to work out what worked and what didn't. So I also know that our community will be generous in terms of if I'm testing something out and it doesn't all go straightforward. We'll all learn from that experience, right?
Absolutely, for sure.
So audio on Twitter, kind of as a whole, we've got this next tweet from Alex Heath, which talks about the possibility of having voice calls in DMs. Now, I kind of link that as in audio. Obviously, we had the audio tab. We were talking about podcasting. We're wondering what's happening with social audio. Now this video and voice calling potentially in DMs. Madeline, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, this is super interesting. The article is talking about making DMs encrypted and then adding video and voice calling. We're all for anything with audio, and I think that would be pretty amazing to be able to utilize it that way. You can certainly make a video on your phone and then upload it in your DM. I've done that many times, but I would love to be able to just record an audio right in the DMs, with text messaging. At least with me on my iPhone, I can easily do that. Sometimes if I'm in a hurry and I just don't want to type out my text, I'll just tap on the little microphone and record the audio. And I really like doing that because you're really able to get your voice in front of that person, the inflection, the everything behind it, instead of them just reading text, which is very easy to not understand where the person's coming from. And sometimes you take something the wrong way just by reading the words because you don't hear the voice behind it. So I love the idea of this. But what's interesting, Legion had a tweet come out right after this one I just shared, saying that voice notes and DMs have been there for a long time now. However, it's only limited to some countries, and a simple VPN may do the trick as well. And he quote tweets his original tweet from February saying, "Did you know you can send voice notes and DMs on Twitter, but it's only available in 5 countries." And he mentions Argentina, Brazil, India, Japan, and the Netherlands. And then in that tweet, somebody had asked him, is this iOS as well? And he says he's on an Android. So it might just be an Android thing. We don't know. But I've never seen, because he has screenshots of seeing the little microphone button to be able to, or the little audio button to be able to record. But I've never seen that before, but it makes me think of how I can do that in my text messaging on my iPhone.
Yeah, I mean, and this is voice notes as opposed to a voice call, isn't it? So this would be a sort of asynchronous, leaving that sort of voice text message, if you like. Voice text message, that doesn't make any sense at all. But like a voice message, a bit like the voice tweets that we've spoken about before, but in the DMs instead, yeah?
Right, right. But when they're talking about in this, the tweet from Alex Heath of The Verge, talking about actual voice calling. So that to me sounds like it's going to be like real time. Like you and I, even though I'm in the US and you're in the UK, it sounds like we'd be able to have a live voice call between us in the DM, which would be amazing. It'd be kind of like using WhatsApp. And we know Elon wants to turn Twitter into a more all-in-one type of app and incorporate, I think, voice, a payment system. Like he has a lot of big ideas that I think could make it amazing.
Oh yeah, he wants it to do all the things, all the bells and whistles. He needs to find the people to help him out to do that. Yeah. I'm not so sure about this whole one app to rule them all. I'll sit and watch that one. I'm not sure that's going to do it, but yeah, I get that that's his plan, and I don't know. Does anyone want to make a phone call on Twitter? It's a bit like with the audio tab. Does anyone want to listen to a podcast on Twitter, especially a podcast they can't choose? Sorry, I'm still banging on about that, and I know it's not going to change anytime soon now. But I'm just not sure they're kind of going through the whole product 101. Like, do you know your user? Do you know what they want? Those kind of things.
Right. Exactly. My thought exactly on that.
A lovely tweet here. We're going to big up. We do love Andrew Lyons, the way that you promote different spaces and the visuals that you use. This was one that I absolutely loved. Look who's talking on Spaces. This tweet came out earlier this week. Really caught my eye. It's just pure gold, I think, Madeline, in terms of being eye-catching and letting people know that spaces are going on, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's great that Andrew really keeps a pulse on everything through, he has spacesdashboard.com, which is phenomenal. And I'm so glad I saw this particular tweet because I did not realize there were these hosted spaces from NPR, NASA, Forbes, and Hootsuite that were going on just a few days ago. Or maybe it was yesterday. So big names with lots of followers are using spaces. And I think that's just something that really screams, I'm hoping, to Elon, like, don't mess with spaces. It's powerful. It brings people together, great conversations. And we're seeing this shift with the bigger names starting to use it finally after almost 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, NASA have always been a big supporter of spaces. They've done quite a few large spaces that people have joined, NPR equally. But to see, they're obviously still using it. They're seeing the value in it. And yeah, hopefully this is something that, might make Elon realise that there are these big names using it and, it's worth keeping. Please keep it.
Exactly. Yes, please don't let it go away. But yeah, we're seeing big profile accounts. I think Hootsuite has only used it a few times before, and it's nice seeing them embracing it. I think this is just something we're going to start seeing more and more as long as Spaces continues to work and we don't have issues with it.
Sure. Yeah, I think so too. I do think so too. I want to scoot back round. We were talking about Daniele's space, and Hoseline has dipped into the DMs with some information that I think is important that we cover around Daniele's space. He said Daniele left on his own terms, which I should have said earlier. The space was recorded and Daniele deleted the account. So that's why the space isn't available. So yeah, anyone who was going back to try and find that as well, that's why it's not there, because the account has gone, which makes sense.
Interesting that he deleted his account. I wonder how many former Twitter employees have done that, have actually deleted their accounts and are like, okay, I'm done, moving on.
Yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? how many people have just kind of disappeared. I did actually go into my DMs to try and just send some messages to some of the Twitter staff that I've been in touch with over the last year or so, just a kind of general thinking of you type message. And I think out of the 5 that I had in my DMs, 2 of them have completely gone. So I can't reach them at all. I was quite sad about that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, what one thing that popped into my notifications earlier today was Danny Singh, who was, running spaces on the, as through Twitter, on the Twitter team. And he liked one of my tweets after he was let go. He had done a really, heartfelt tweet, and I had responded to it. And I know he's been getting back to every single person that tweeted him on there with when all that went down. And it took him a little bit of time, but he finally, he saw mine and hit the like, and I was glad to see him in my feed. So I can understand that some of the former employees would want to just be like, I'm done with this, delete the account, not look back. But not everybody is going to do that. And it is always nice to still see some of them on Twitter. Maybe they're not using it as much. Maybe they're not communicating much, but they're still there. We can still reach out to them. We can still DM them. It is hard to move on without seeing them all the time, right? Because, we really relied on them for so much information with what's happening with spaces, them hosting the regular Q&As, and always wanting to hear from all of us as the users.
Well, yeah, this was the thing. I was giving feedback on the audio tab to a couple of them, and different things like that. And, messages were always usually felt like me grumbling about a load of stuff and them going, thanks very much. Do tell us if there's anything else. But, it still felt like a connection. And I guess it's that reminder for all of us, really, whether or not it's someone working at Twitter or whether it's just someone that you feel you've built up a rapport with here on Twitter or on any social media site, is to ensure that if that relationship is only on that one platform, that perhaps you follow those people in other places as well, because these social media sites, they're not infallible. They could fall over, they could disappear, all kinds of things could happen, and then you'll lose those connections and those relationships. So it's worth thinking about who it is that you would truly miss should the whole thing fall down.
Exactly. And that's just a great reminder for everyone out there who does use Twitter for business, is try to get people to join your mailing list, get people to your website, because those are things that are not going to ever go away. Twitter could go away tomorrow, Facebook, all these social media sites could go away. Don't think they can't. We never thought MySpace would go away, and it did. A billionaire bought it and ran it into the ground. It's happened before. Something like this could possibly happen again. We hope it doesn't, because we've all worked so hard to build communities, to connect with people on these awesome platforms, but they could go away. So try to get people to join your mailing list, find other ways to connect with them, because it would be such a shame to lose touch. Back in the MySpace days, I used it for business. I had built up so many followers, so many great connections, and didn't think it would ever go away. When it did, I had nothing to show for it. I had no way to reach out to any of these people I had built amazing relationships with, unless I had their phone number or their email address. But many times, are we doing that on social media? No. Unless you get them to come join your mailing list. If they, hey, you want to stay in touch with me, be sure to join my mailing list. And I send out, a weekly newsletter. We can stay in touch. Something to think about if you're using this for business. Don't forget the power of your website and your email list.
Yeah, important message there for everybody. We've said this pretty much every week since Elon took over, and I think it's worth saying every single week, because none of us wants to lose touch. Certainly the community we've built around all things audio, I think almost I can still feel myself, George, I am not being as positive as you want me to be. I know that. The optimism is not there. You could probably hear it, and I'm trying really hard to be optimistic about it. But yeah, it just feels like so much has changed so fast that anything could happen. And that uncertainty, I'm not this is the beauty of being live on social audio. You can hear the uncertainty in my voice. you can hear those pessimistic thoughts. But there you are. That's what's real about it, isn't it?
Absolutely. We still have some other news. Clubhouse news. We still got things to talk about with Clubhouse this week.
Yeah, just a quick thing on Clubhouse, rolling out houses to more users globally. We did discuss this briefly with Michael last week about how houses are still in beta and was it ready to be given to more users. There were, Michael and Morgan particularly, I know, have used houses in beta and have been testing it out and have successfully kind of built up a mini community within the community, if you see what I mean, where, we sort of drop in and chat to one another, invite only, being able to really kind of hone and shape that community by only giving invites to people who then invite people they know, but then perhaps, keeping it small, if you see what I mean. And there were some reservations there that Michael had about whether or not the tech was really ready for it, whether it was generally ready to be rolled out. But it seems this tweet from Sajad says, that they're thinking of rolling it out to more countries. Looks like all non-US users can now create one house in-app. That was something Morgan was talking about as well. So perhaps if Morgan's free in a bit, he could come and embellish a little bit on that. We think perhaps a US release scheduled for early next week, potentially. So, yeah, more to come from Clubhouse. Houses is definitely something they're leaning into, those smaller, more intimate groups of people. I would say the difference there is that generally people in there are already connected by at least one other person that's in the house. And that makes for a very different atmosphere when you're then in there having a chat with the others that are there. I've really enjoyed houses more than I've enjoyed diving into rooms from the hallway. So I do think it's something that they should hang on to and roll out, and it looks like they are leaning into it. So that's exciting. Michael has also tweeted this week about the nation flags because there's some football happening. It's the World Cup, everyone. And Clubhouse has got on board and they have got these nation flags that can now be shown in a user's profile. So you can kind of go along, pick your flag and have it showing on your profile picture. So, yeah, Michael says here they introduced the feature for the duration of the Summer Olympics in 2021. So this is kind of a dip back into the archive, if you like, and pulling that one out again for the World Cup. So good for them, kind of tying into what's going on and coming up with a little fun feature there that I'm sure people on Clubhouse will be enjoying. So yeah, a bit of Clubhouse news.
Yeah, and also because we have this interactive chat on mobile at the bottom right, you see the little purple bubble. Paul Armstrong replied in there just a little while ago to the discussion. He said he just opened Clubhouse. Seems like a ghost town. Lots of rooms they follow, has less than one room a week despite having thousands of members. So that is interesting for sure.
That is interesting. I wonder if they're all in houses.
Have
they all gone and siphoned off the people they really actually want to talk to, who are the people that have engaged with them elsewhere? Because that's the thing, that's what could happen. That's what I could see potentially happening. And, Morgan, do definitely correct me or come up against me on this one if I'm wrong. But potentially, if you've got a group, a room that you're running, a public room that you're running, but you see the same 10 people in there every week, then you're going to give those people the invites to your house, right? And eventually, surely, that's the group of people that are engaged and are loyal and are therefore there, but they're part of the house. So do you then run a house and a room? It's I guess it's different content for different things. It's all those things that I'm sure people, creators over on Clubhouse will be thinking about. Certainly that's what I would be thinking about if I was trying to juggle it. And again, it's time as well. Like, if you've got time for content for 2 rooms and to host 2 rooms and, a room and a house. And yeah, I mean, there's lots to think about there.
Right, exactly. And then one last piece of news you have on wisdom.
Oh, yeah. So Wisdom is one of the standalone apps that I've got on my phone, and is one, I've tested out lots of them over the last 18 months. This is one that has continually stayed on my phone, actually. This one and Soundwave and Racket, they're the three that have stayed. I've tested out others and they've been deleted. But Wisdom has launched this voice answers, which is short form audio. You go into the app, and you can either click on the Ask tab or the Live tab. At the moment, it does load up in Ask mode, I guess, because this is its new thing. And there will be a question at the top of the screen, and someone will have asked a question. I don't know, for instance, what's been the podcast you've been listening to most this month? Something like that. You'll hear a little short voice message from whoever's posed the question. It will be there up on the screen, and you can then reply with your answer. And people are going in. It's a kind of very quick way. You give an answer and then you can listen to other people's answers if you want to. The live Wisdom version, the original, if you like, is still there, but you click on the Live tab for that. And Wisdom had positioned itself as, somewhere to go where you would learn something new, hence the name. It was all about having experts who would then talk and kind of answer questions from people on their topic. So this is sort of the shorter form version of that. For me, it reminded me of the Alexa Answers feature that was available on smart speakers, which was sort of crowdsourced answers, if you like. So, Alexa would need an answer to a question. You could join the email list to find out what those questions were and then record your answer, and it could potentially be used as the answer to an Alexa question that's often asked. So it does sound quite similar to that, but just something extra that they've added over there. Again, it's taking the core of what they want that platform to be, but just doing it in a slightly different way. So interesting to see them bringing out the new feature as well.
Yeah, definitely. Is Alexa still a thing or not as much?
Well, it's still on my desk. But yes, you're right to say. I mean, my goodness, I think Paul Armstrong's the one to ask really about Amazon and what's going on over there. But yes, the Alexa, but by all accounts, the Alexa teams have been cut. Amazon's teams have been cut. Yes, there's a change of direction. There's in the voice industry, I really feel like that there has been over the last 3 months, 6 months or so, a kind of change in direction around those platforms that we might have expected to, again, be around forever. It started really a few months back when Google announced that they were going to sunset Actions, which were their version of apps for the Google Assistant smart speakers. And now we hear that, Amazon's Alexa teams have been cut. And, a lot like Twitter, if you cut the engineers and you cut the devs, then you don't have anyone there building the thing. So, it's kind of, let's see where that goes. I mean, the Amazon AMP was what we've really been talking about here on All Things Audio, because that was their social audio play. And again, a few weeks ago, we'd said that, their staff was cut by an awful lot, wasn't it? It was a larger number than we thought. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but, they were left with a very, very small team. And potentially I felt that AMP and Alexa at some point should marry and pair up and be useful to one another. AMP almost being like the big sister, big brother to flash briefings, which, Alexa and Amazon kind of pushed as their own version of a podcast that could be reached via a smart speaker. And then AMP sort of being the grown-up version, if you like, being a radio station version of that perhaps people might want to tune into every day and listen to content from their chosen providers. But I mean, I'm not sure. The general feeling at the moment is that voice is really becoming the way that we will interact. So it's becoming the interface, or it's always been the interface, I guess. But it's more about optimizing the content that we've got on the internet and the stuff that we search for voice search than it is creating new stuff specifically for voice. So things like skills, actions, all those kind of things. But again, it's all in flux. It feels like the whole tech world is in flux. and no one's quite sure or certain. But yeah, I mean, I could have a whole second podcast about voice, so don't tempt me. Bez, hello, welcome to the space.
Hello. Happy Wednesday, and I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday coming up. What I wanted to share, and Madeline, you spoke to this just recently here, just a few minutes ago, is the importance of you know um, all of these platforms. Like you mentioned MySpace. There's been other platforms that have come and gone, and it takes us back to the basics. Is that all of these are tools that we don't own, and they're our rented land, and the importance of getting people on an email list, or maybe paying for a community that you can curate and take people to, Um, Also, hey, maybe now Discord becomes an option. You can set up your own Discord server and you move the conversation that way. And people will complain about LinkedIn audio. It's lacking some of the features that Twitter or Clubhouse has. But I tell them, look, when Clubhouse or Twitter lack some of these features, we figured out a workaround. And at the end of the day, the magic happens when you take people off the platform and you have a one-on-one conversation with them, and that's where you deepen and strengthen relationships, and you decide where that relationship is going to go. Is it going to be a friends? Is it going to be a connection, and you don't know how it will turn out in the future? Is it business you're going to do right now, or business that you may do in the future? I mean, it's so contextual, but what's happening with Twitter just takes us back to the basics, and we just need to act accordingly. If we value the connections we've made here, and we still want them to keep in touch with, and whether Twitter succeeds or not, I mean, it really shouldn't matter. We should go back to the X's and O's and the blocking and tackling that we do when we do business. So those are my 2 cents.
I love that, Bez. That was so well said. So earlier, I don't know if you were here earlier, but I had talked about how I got to go have lunch with George Silverman today because he's here in Houston visiting family for the holidays. And that is the power of utilizing the internet, digital marketing, social media, and especially Twitter, because we can take these relationships we build online and move forward with them in so many different ways. I see AC Hart's here, and her and I met on Spaces recently, and then we had a phone call afterwards. It's so awesome. I mean, that's the power of these connections. So such a great point, Bez, that you bring that up. And that's why earlier I brought up, if you're using social media for marketing, for business, just don't forget about getting people to your website, getting people to your email list, because those are things you own that are not going to go away tomorrow. Twitter could go away tomorrow, but your email list and your website is not going away unless you want it to go away. You have the control. But great having you here, Bez.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where social audio, that conversation, you can take that conversation and have it in real life somewhere else too.
And audio is just so powerful. That's why I am just so attracted to Twitter Spaces and using this platform to have these great conversations like with you, Suze, and all of our listeners here, and becoming friends with so many people through this. Usually it's just from, networking, going to, normally like Suze and I wouldn't be meeting at a conference in real life, right? But we, through Twitter, we've built a great friendship, great business relationship, started this space, grew into a podcast. We've done so many, and I know one day we're going to definitely meet in person. It just hasn't happened yet. But it just shows you the power of using all these things that we have at our fingertips. And I know not everybody's interested in social audio. That's okay. But just using these tools to connect with more people around the world. Prior to the internet, it was way harder. And that was why I jumped all in on the internet. I mean, I was telling George earlier at lunch, my story, 1995 is when I first used the internet, saw the potential of like, wow, I could connect with people all over the world instead of just people in my local community in person. I could just do it through a computer. And look at all these years later, It's just so mind blowing to just look at that technology and how far we've come, and how these days we love utilizing social audio to just have these awesome conversations, and we all get to know each other so much more on a deeper level.
Yeah, I mean, I thought being involved in a Twitter chat, which is where I met you, Madeline, obviously Twitter Smarter, I thought that was a great way of connecting with people. I mean, and then this is just another level. And, you actually combined the two by having your Twitter Smarter after chat right here on Spaces. So not only have you made that connection within the chat and all, shared answers to the various questions that you're putting out on the topic each week, but you're then listening and hearing from people that have been in that chat. It's, it really does form a very, very strong connection.
Real quick, you know, before 1995, and I remember 1995 because that's when my office got its first shared email, right? And I was like, oh, the World Wide Web. And we even called the World Wide Web, or some people calling it the information superhighway. We don't call the internet that anymore. But what happened before we had general public had access to the internet? How did we learn about that party? How did we learn about? Uh, I'll give you an example. Like, I'm half Peruvian. My dad's Peruvian, and as a kid, he was always trying to teach me how to play soccer or football. This is what they call it in Peru, and he had a passion for it. And um, he was passionate about soccer. I mean, when the World Cup rolled around, it didn't matter what hour he was watching it, and I would watch it with him. And he and the Peruvian team came to do practice with the U.S. men national team in Mission Viejo, and I was working in the city of Orange, there in Orange County, California. And how did I find out that there was a little practice, and it was at a high school? And I'm like, oh yeah, with my Peruvian friends, let's go. We're gonna be the only ones. Nobody else knows. I show up. You can't even get into the whole field is surrounded by Peruvians watching them play or practice with the U.S. men's national team, and we didn't have the internet. And then you think about everything how you moved in your world and how you knew events happen. We didn't have the internet, but you know what was the awesome thing that we need to get to, like how you did with George, is we need to have connections. We need to break bread with each other. And this is the beauty of social audio and the tools we have. We need to take those tools and take it backwards and get deep in our relations. Get to know. I'd love to get to know many of you in real life. One day, if I'm in Texas somewhere, I'm going to try to hit up Madeline, and if I'm in the UK, Susie, or anybody who will have me, because I love people. So, anyways, and George, tell us about George. I'd like to know, you know, how nice he really is.
George is awesome in real life. I just have to say, we had such a nice get together today. I went and picked him up. He's staying in a home that I used to live like less than 5 minutes away from. So I knew exactly where it was. And it's such a great area, a suburb of Houston. And we had a nice lunch, and we just had, didn't we, George, just had just the best time today? Like, we just had so much fun.
And a big hug. You can't do a hug on.
Exactly.
I requested that feature several times. They seem to be ignoring me.
Elon's not listening to you, George. Doesn't he have the power to make that happen? You would think.
I don't know. It's really interesting. When we first experimented with social audio in 1969, 70, the people, we had gourmet cooks, photographers, and what was the other one? Gourmet cooks, photographers, and international travelers. And it was all New York area because we couldn't afford the phone charges otherwise. And they all, each of the groups, not at our instigation, but they all spontaneously decided they had to meet. So we had all these things at restaurants. So there's a strong draw for people to come together and meet each other face to face. But the connections made the connections that are made here are deep.
I've got to mention, I've only been on Twitter since mid-August, so it's funny to me, that it might suddenly evaporate. I guess we'll find out. But,
Oh.
I deliberately wasn't on social media for like the last 10 years. And when I wasn't engaging in social media, what I was doing was I was, studying real connection and communication. I was studying how the voice moves through the tissue and organ systems of the body because I'm really interested in how understanding between two people actually occurs. And I think of social media, I think of things in terms of like yin and yang. Yang is more of like a masculine principle, so it's radiant, and yin is more of feminine principle, so it's invitational. And I genuinely believe that the future belongs to people who are willing to be more yin in their communication, which means to open a space, to listen, to take one thing and, go really, really deep with it, to take care of it and nurture it for, 18 years or whatever. The masculine approach I call the spray and pray approach, where you basically throw a lot of seeds out and you hope something lands and takes root. And both approaches are actually necessary for life to happen. But in the world that we live in today, with this info glut and the social media and just the absolute amount of ideas that are being thrown at us, there's an overwhelming amount of the spray and pray approach. Everyone's got something to say. They're desperate to be heard, but people are closing off their listening because they're feeling overwhelmed. And so those of us that are really willing, like some of the people in this room that I happen to know of, like Rose and George and Madeline, because you don't have to be male to have, a yin aspect. Everybody has both. And those people that are willing to really soften and open and listen, to be patient, to go one-on-one and deepen those relationships, are the people who are going to be successful. So I feel like even if Twitter evaporates, I'm going to be okay because I've been practicing those skills. That's what I chose to do instead.
No, we'll all go somewhere else if we have to.
Yes, we will. We will all go somewhere else. Yeah. It's true.
But there's something so special about Twitter. I've been on all the social media platforms since they all started. And I like the other platforms, but it's just not the same as Twitter. There's something special about Twitter for connecting, for networking, even though it's short form content, which seems interesting, right? Like that we could have build deep relationships with short discussions. But then social audio comes along and like Spaces, I felt like was such a game changer. I know many of us here dramatically increased our followers, connected with way more people once we got active on Spaces, just by showing up and having conversations.
I think the Spaces is the game changer too, because it's about the human voice. It's actually about real conversation and connection. And I guess I wonder, Madeline, that you must have investigated Mastodon already.
I actually have not. No, because I haven't heard enough good things about it to make me want to go over there. But I have signed up for the wait list for Post because Post does sound interesting to me. It just got, information just got released today that Kara Swisher is actually one of the people behind it, which I was wondering if she was because she's a journalist. But it sounds like there are people out there. I think there's quite a few people trying to build the next Twitter right now. But, the odds of one becoming the one, and that's even if Twitter fails, we still don't know what's going to happen with Twitter yet. I'm just not ready to go jump on every single one because it's a lot of work to sit here and go sign up for every new platform. And do you want to invest time? And then you feel like you should. And then who all's going to be on there? And is it worth my time? But this is like the first, usually I'm the one everybody's like, oh yeah, I've heard of that, Madeline. You're always talking about, like, I'll just go sign up for all of them but I don't know, something's changed in me. I'm just surprised that I'm not running to every single one right now to check them out. But something about Mastodon, because when that came out years ago, I did not hear enough good things about it. I just heard a lot of negative things about it, and it just did not grab my attention. So it's not to say I'm not going to sign up, but I just haven't yet. Sorry, George, go ahead.
Yep. And I'm still as optimistic, if not more optimistic than ever, about what's going to happen with Twitter in general and Spaces in particular. I'm either going to be the guy who is the wrongest of the wrong about Twitter, which you will not be able to tell me about because it won't be here, or I'll be the guy who can give the biggest "I told you so." But I think it's going to be unrecognizable in a good sense, and probably the biggest thing in all of in the entire internet.
I agree with you, George. Yeah. And real quick, but you know what? One thing Twitter can't take away is the connection in real life that you and Madeline had, right?
That's
yes,
right.
Exactly. Yep. We'll do it again next Thanksgiving when I'm back in next Thanksgiving. So yeah.
Yeah, Tommaso, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, because I wanted to add about Mastodon. That's something that I found I would say most interesting, at least from my perspective, is how much it's easy to import your data to Mastodon, because basically other platforms like Twitter make it, I would say, easier to export your data than to import. There are some harsh limits around importing data, not only following, but for example around adding people to list. But on Mastodon it's pretty much you import the CSV and you got all of the following there.
How do you decide on the instance, they call it, the server you're going to be on? That was the daunting thing for me. I was faced with 1,000 servers to choose between, and I know you can move from one to the other. They said just pick one, but I don't know. I just not uncomfortable to do that.
Yeah, I've signed up and I'm on kind of a general server, but I don't feel like I'm in the right place. It's not my tribe. It's not my community. I found my people over here on Twitter, and now I've got to do it all over again over there, and I haven't found them yet.
Same.
No, you don't. No, you
Same.
don't. Yeah, you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
Well, I did think about setting up an audio server for Mastodon because I couldn't find one. I'm sure someone's already done it now, but there didn't seem to be a .audio. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll have a look and see where are my podcasters? There's huge podcast Twitter over here. The community is huge. And I couldn't really see people over there. So I did think about doing that. That's typical me though. Oh, there isn't a thing. Let's jump in and just do the thing. Is it a hard thing to do? Dunno. Let's try and work it out. Typical me. Let's just try and work it out. Paul, hello. Welcome to the space. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you guys? Glad to be listening as always. George, you said something that just put shivers down my spine, and it was to do with just rampant freedom of speech and that sort of thing. I'm 100% behind the ability for freedom of speech, but when I start seeing the owner of a massive multi-million, hundreds of millions of people platform freely saying oh, should I bring back all of the people that we block for various reasons just to have everybody back freedom of speech? That's not okay. We can't have that.
I agree. Yeah.
It's just crazy to have this open freedom of speech. And I put in the chat, freedom of speech is fine, but freedom of reach is not okay. And that's my issue. And if he's not being transparent and saying this is what I want to run Twitter as, then we've got problems. And I think people will start to it'll be that pop on, pop off effect. And I think Twitter's much more important.
That's his phrase.
Yes, absolutely. No, absolutely. But he's not living by it. That's the thing.
Well, he's developing stuff. It's got to be developed, but it's not going to be pretty. I said it's wonderful, but I didn't say it's pretty.
No, it's not I would agree with that. How much of a rope are you giving him, George? How many years?
I don't. I think it's going to be unrecognizable within a year. I think it's going to be unrecognizable within a few months. It's going to have. He's going to implement so much stuff, and people says he has got no programmers left. That's nonsense.
He's got about 2,000 employees left so far.
Yeah, and he's bringing in people from Tesla and other places that are passionate about creating. And this is a startup with all the mess of a startup. It's a total mess, and it's going to be worse.
I would agree with the mess. I don't think it's a startup when you're making millions of pounds.
Well, it's not making. He's losing money now over it, and he's losing a lot of money over it. He was bleeding at $3 to $4 million a day.
Yeah, but I think that's the mismanagement more than a lot of other things that was on it, really. I don't know. I feel I'm with Madeline, I'm with Susan, I'm with you on a lot of different things. I just feel like there needs to be more transparency over He's got to act like an adult and say, these are the rules. If there are no rules, it's chaos. And that's ridiculous. That's just pointless.
Yeah, and it's a lot as well. Like your question about like how many years, like is he just going to do all this and actually in a year's time he's not going to be around? He's just going to do some stuff, throw it all on the fire and walk away from it, or is he actually in this for the long haul? Like it's hard to tell.
I get that he wants to make a super app, an amazing app, he's got to make money somehow, right? We get that. We just need a little bit more guidance, I think, and just I need to see him as a steady hand, not as a slash and burn guy, as we've seen in other businesses that he's run, which are, some have been successful, some have been wildly successful, some haven't. And we have to stop saying, oh, he's a genius, he's doing this. I need to see some results. I've seen him do it twice really well, and I've seen him do it 3 times really badly in other places. And that's the issue of where I'm sort of at the moment with him. This is something that's more important than, you could argue, either the other companies that he's done potentially and that sort of thing. But yeah, like you say, everyone's very protective of Twitter. So I will step down from my soapbox now.
Thank you for sharing with us, Paul. Love hearing from you. Glad you were here joining us today. Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.